You know, I cannot practice in front of Christina on the Court of Appeals or in the federal district court. Being a cousin, I can't. I've seen her in her robe twice, and those were the two times she was sworn into the two judicial positions. My name's Norm McDonald. I'm married to Margaret Espinosa McDonald, who's Christina's cousin. I've known Christina for over 50 years, and I've been practicing law in Belen for 45 years.
Well, I first appeared in front of Judge Armijo 16 years ago when I was pregnant with my son, very pregnant, on a jury trial that was a wrongful death police shooting case.
I first met Judge Armijo when she was appointed to the New Mexico Court of Appeals, and since then we are both members of the International Women's Forum.
Christina has always done everything the right way. She pursued her education directly, responsibly, pursued her career in law, pursued a judicial position, and really I thought showed great courage, because when she got the appointment from Governor Johnson in 1996 to the Court of Appeals, she knew that a few months later she was going to have to run in a partisan election statewide. So here's this female Hispanic Republican attorney running statewide in a partisan race and winning.
So one other thing about Judge Armijo that I very much appreciate as a fellow feminist, she's a pioneer among women in the law. And in 1978, she was the first woman solo practitioner to open a solo practitioner office in Las Vegas, New Mexico. When new businesses opened up with male proprietors, it was always front page news. This was a big deal. And she did not get the front page news. In fact, there was no mention of her in the newspaper. And about 6 months into her time, she was talking to a friend of hers who said, well, we need to do a press release. Of course, once the newspaper got it, they thought, oh, this must be very important. We need to go interview her. There's a press release. And so they went and interviewed her, and sure enough, they put together an article. It did not make the front page, but it was put in the shopping grocery section. It didn't stop her. She went on to become the first Latina Court of Appeals judge, and then she became a U.S. District Court judge in 2001.
Judge Christina Armijo was born to a family of significant historical distinction in the New Mexico legal community. Her grandfather, Luis E. Armijo, served as a district judge in Las Vegas in the 1920s. He presided over a very famous murder trial, the McGee murder trial.
Christina sadly lost her father when she was 11 years of age, and she was the oldest of 4 children. So she was raised by basically a single mother, a very strong career woman who had a major impact on her life, as well as her grandmother. We called her Aunt Mana. She was the widow of Judge Armijo. And Mana was a career woman, highly educated, and made a big impact on Christina. The entire family advocated tremendously for education. Christina knew from her childhood that she was going to go to college and perhaps well beyond college. That was the expectation, and she lived up to it.
I am a criminal defense attorney. I have practiced in state court and federal court in the state of New Mexico for about 40 years. I've appeared in front of many judges, and one of the things I appreciate the most about Judge Armijo is her command of the law in the courtroom and her willingness to come up with practical solutions to real-life problems, both on and off the bench.
A case that comes to mind when I'm thinking about how she is scrupulous in her approach to analyzing and protecting due process and speedy trial rights of criminal defendants is the David Hudak case. Mr. Hudak was a Canadian citizen who was indicted in 2002. He had a counterterrorism training camp in New Mexico, and he also possessed some unlicensed warheads that he had purchased from an American company. The government did not allege that he was a terrorist. The indictment surrounded licensing issues that the government alleged he had not complied with. Judge Armijo was not the original judge on Mr. Hudak's case. Mr. Hudak was detained pending trial and had been in custody for 12 months. Judge Conway, on the eve of trial, recused himself, and the case was reassigned randomly to Judge Armijo. As soon as Judge Armijo got the case, realizing that Mr. Hudak's Sixth Amendment speedy trial rights were at stake, she quickly determined that she needed to get Mr. Hudak's trial going quickly. So she set the trial for October. And the government came with a big poster of the Middle East. And there were red arrows pointing to the country where these individuals were coming. It was actually a country that was an ally of the United States. But in the aftermath of 9/11, she realized that this was potentially inflammatory. And the only way to ensure that Mr. Hudak had a fair trial was to make sure that the post 9/11 atmosphere was not going to prevent jurors from being fair and fairly evaluating Mr. Hudak's case for what it was and not for what it wasn't. And so with over 100 jury panel members, she made a decision that the best way to ensure that Mr. Hudak had a fair jury that was chosen, both for Mr. Hudak and of course the government as well, was to do voir dire with each potential juror individually. And so that's what they did. And voir dire took 3 days. And on I think right before Thanksgiving, the jury returned its verdict and they found Mr. Hudak not guilty of all counts. And then actually, coincidentally, I filed a civil RICO case and it was against Halliburton because they had sold these weapons to him. And there was a motion, it got assigned to Judge Armijo. And there was a motion to dismiss the case, and she wrote a 90-page opinion denying their motion, and then the case settled.
The formality and courtesy that characterized Judge Armijo's courtroom seemed to spring from the same source. Her abiding belief that everyone who appeared before her, criminal defendants, victims, attorneys on all sides, was equally entitled both to respect and to fair treatment under the law. These principles are often described as goals of the judicial system, but it was always striking to see how consistently and naturally Judge Armijo put them into practice. It seemed to come from her core, as if she couldn't imagine treating people in any other way.
Both as a lawyer and as a judge, Christina has always been so committed to the advancement of justice in every case. And one case that comes to mind was a case that was brought by a registered sex offender against the city of Albuquerque, challenging an ordinance that kept him from accessing a public library. Judge Armijo, as in every case, balanced the interests of both this individual and his right under the First Amendment to access information from a public library, as well as the government's interest in protecting children. And in the end, she determined that this individual, a registered sex offender, had the First Amendment right to access information from a public library. It might not have been the popular view, but Judge Armijo never shied away from taking a minority view if she believed that that result was the correct one.
Christina went through 2 vetting processes, when the Court of Appeals and the federal bench. And I always thought those that were vetting her are wasting their time. They're not going to find any skeletons in her closet. She's the antithesis of the Kavanaugh vetting process.
In 2001, Judge Christina Armijo was nominated by President George W. Bush to the federal bench. And in the interview process, then White House counsel, Judge Alberto Gonzalez, asked her a very interesting question. He asked her, Judge Armijo, if your family were to describe you in one word, what would that be? And Judge Armijo was surprised by the question and remained silent for a few moments. And then she answered, serious. And Judge Alberto Gonzalez responded to her, yes, Judge, I am serious. If your family were to describe you in one word, what would that be? And Judge Armijo responded again, serious. And Judge Gonzalez said, "I am serious, Judge Armijo." And it was only after the snickering that could be heard from staff attorneys sitting in the corner of the room taking notes that Judge Gonzalez realized that indeed Judge Armijo was answering the question. So that describes Christina Armijo. She is indeed serious, but with an astute sense of humor.
Judge Armijo is a very deep thinker. She's very scholarly, and one of the things about her that I appreciated in my role as a magistrate judge was she always asked me my opinion about cases, so it was very collaborative. And she was a great mentor, so she helped mentor me into becoming a judge. She was always a really great resource to talk to about things that were unusual that I maybe didn't expect coming into the role.
I was one of Judge Armijo's law clerks for 2 years. She was a kind and considerate boss and mentor. I worked for Judge Armijo when she successfully negotiated the agreement to move the bankruptcy court to its current location at 333 Lomas Boulevard Northwest. The move will save the federal judiciary millions of dollars in the coming years. Judge Armijo is justly proud to be the principal architect of the relocation.
So as an appellate judge, I think I have more of an opportunity to work with others through cases, through opinions. Christina and I were fortunate to interview Ruth Bader Ginsburg at the Supreme Court for the International Women's Forum. And that was fun to work on that together and to really have this conversation with Justice Ginsburg about her work. And it was interesting to have Christina's perspective, being a trial lawyer and deciding things, a lone wolf perspective, this is the way we ought to proceed. So it was really fun for me to work with her and to reach a consensus, because I think her approach was certainly very, very valuable to us working together and reaching a program that I think the audience was able to really enjoy.
Christina sought judicial positions, I think, again, in part because of her admiration for her grandfather. And she's absolutely well-suited by her temperament and nature. Plus, she's damn smart. And she's an incredible researcher. We knew she would apply herself to the maximum, and she has. She's really distinguished herself.
Christina, thank you so much for asking me to speak for you. I'm so honored because you're a beacon for women in the law. You're a trailblazer. You've made things possible for me and women who are going to come after me. You've been a great mentor to me, and I'm just so happy that you're getting this award. It's so well-deserved.
Prima Christina, thank you for asking me to represent the family on this occasion. We love you so much. We are so proud of you. You deserve this honor, and we look forward to growing even older together.
Christina, thank you for asking me to speak for you tonight. It was an honor and a pleasure, and just something that I will always remember. Serious.